Assalamu alaikum students. Today we are going to be covering a new chapter. The name of this chapter is Communal and Political Awakening, time period 1920s to 1930s. So before we start off with the topics, I'd like to give you a background. This was the period in which there were a lot of forced conversions and riots. And particularly the Hindus of the subcontinents had triggered movements like Shuddhi movement and Sangathan movement. Shuddhi movement wanted to convert the backward sections of Muslims of the subcontinent to Hinduism, whereas the Sangathan movement, which was started by Pandit Madan Mohan, adopted the policy of India for Hindus only. The aim of Sangathan was to reunite the different sections of Hindus and make a powerful nation so they could fight the Muslims whenever needed. At the same time, Muslims also organized movements like Tanzim and Tabligh movements. But when compared with the Hindu movements like Shuddhi and Sangathan, the Muslim movements were not as strong. However, a seed of distrust of each other's religious beliefs was sown and was to grow and flourish as attitudes towards each other's religion hardened. Then came the period of 1927, in which Lord Birkenhead, who was the Secretary of State for India, organized and sent the Simon Commission to find out the views of main political parties in India. On arrival in India, the commission was greeted with black flags and jeering slogans of Simon Go Home. The political leaders of Congress and Muslim League boycotted them. The message for British government was that the fate of Indian people will be decided by their own opinions. On your screens you can see the image of Sir John Simon, who was the one who headed the Simon Commission. Then another important topic in this chapter is the Nehru Report. Nehru Report was presented in 1928 when Mr. Nehru and Mr. T.B. Sapru formed a committee to design a draft of the future Constitution of India, which was called Nehru Report. According to the report, all power would rest with the Federation and provinces would only be in charge of their own affairs. It also demanded a dominion status for India. In the coming slides, I'm going to explain in detail what dominion status means. So the report demanded a dominion status for India and that elections should be on a joint basis. Hence, Muslim would lose their separate electorate status. Therefore, Mr. Muhammad Ali Jinnah and Muslim League outrightly rejected the Nehru Report. Let's discuss a little bit in detail what is dominion status. The British Empire had a lot of colonies and some of them had special rights. As per the dominion status, British would control defense, communication, and foreign relations, while local people will make their own decisions and shall have right of self-government in internal matters. Examples are law, education sector, health sector, etc. So all the colonies under this special arrangement would be equal in status and will in no way be subordinate to each other. So I would like to recap this once again that as per the Dominion status, the British Empire would control the external affairs. What are the external affairs? Matters of defense, matters of communication, and where you are managing foreign relations with other countries. While the local people had right of self-government in internal matters, including the law sector, the education sector, health policies. Hence, the special arrangement, which is called the Dominion status, would give equal right to all the colonies. They will be equal in status and in no way be subordinate to each other. After the Nehru report was rejected by Muhammad Ali Jinnah, he came up with his own 14 points, which are popularly referred to as 14 points of Mr. Jinnah, which were given in 1929. So I'd like you to think about the reasons why the 14 points were given. Oftentimes, we are given this question in past papers where you have to write down why Muhammad Ali Jinnah gave the 14 points. So, briefly, we know that the Nehru report was rejected by Mr. Jinnah and he was forced to call it the parting of ways for Muslim League and Congress. He made it very clear that unless the rights and interests of Muslims of India were safeguarded, no constitution will be acceptable to Muslims. The points aimed at bringing freedom of worship, right of education, and assembly to all religions. In central legislature, Muslim representation would not be less than one-third. No cabinet formation would be accepted unless Muslims had one-third representation in it. Hence, the 14 points outrightly rejected by the Congress. Now, let's move towards a very important topic in this chapter, which is about the significance of Salt March. Now, this Salt March is also synonymously known as the civil disobedience movement. This was a time when there was a struggle for self-rule and independence in India. And Mr. Gandhi, who was a very popular leader of Indians, decided to start the civil disobedient movement. And in this movement, they decided that they were going to go ahead and collect salt from the seashores on their own. However, the collection of salt was purely controlled by the British government at that time. In other words, you can say that they had a monopoly in the distribution of salt. From the word monopoly means they were singly controlling the distribution and collection of salt. For example, if I were to give you another example, I'd give you the example of Sui Northern gas pipelines. In current times, the Sui Northern gas pipelines, also referred to as SNGPL, has complete monopoly over the distribution of gas, at least as far as Punjab is concerned. Similarly, as far as salt collection and distribution was concerned, the British government in that time period had complete monopoly. But Mr. Gandhi wanted to symbolically disobey the government so that he could show them that he was not happy with the policies, particularly Congress and the Indians of the subcontinent were unhappy with the policy, and therefore he gathered them and asked them to move with him, march towards the seashore, and collect their own salt. So that's why we say it's a deeply symbolic choice, since salt was used in every household and the British had monopoly in its distribution. But by 1930, 29,000 people, including Mr. Jinnah, Jawaharlal Nehru, and others, were arrested. However, Lord Irwin understood that the mood of the people was that of rebellion and that they were unwilling to settle for less. Hence, he called all party heads in London to work out a constitutional settlement. So, students, this is a very important chapter. There are at least 3 to 4 questions from this chapter that have previously been coming in past papers, one of which is on the civil disobedience movement, the Salt March. Another one that comes is give the background of Jinnah's 14 points in response to the Nehru report. Another question that often comes is why was Simon Commission met with black flags on the arrival in India? And oftentimes you have short questions on the religious movements like Shuddhi and Sanghatan movements. So I'm going to discuss the short questions more in detail in the classroom in the next lesson. While I would like you to observe the images that you are looking at on the screen right now. These are images of the Gandhi March. I'm sorry, these are images of the Salt March that were led by Gandhi at that time. So you can see there's so many people that Mr. Gandhi is leading in this march. As for the homework, I would like you to conduct research and draw and paste pictures of Gandhi's Salt March on a collage so we could display that in the classroom. You can do this in groups of 3 or 4, and in that way we would have at least 5 or 6 collages to display in the classroom, and we could also display them in the corridor. Thank you.